Good morning, everybody. It's PennLive Opinion Editor John Mysick. Thanks for joining us for our final editorial board endorsement interview of the 2018 cycle. Our guest this morning is Republican U.S. Senate candidate Lou Barletta, and for the next hour or so, you'll be taking our questions and yours. Hop on the Facebook, ask questions, tweet them to us. We'll try to get in as many as we can. Congressman, thanks for coming out. Usual drill. You can offer an opening statement if you want to, or we can dive right into questions.
Yeah, let's dive right into the questions.
Mr. McKenzie, your honors.
Well, I'll start with this one. You have come out saying that you support parental leave, but I haven't seen a lot of details about what that would entail.
Yeah.
So could you outline, what you would want to see in a parental leave bill, and what the consequences would be if employers didn't follow it, how it would be paid for, all that.
Yeah, so being the father of 4 working daughters who are also have children, I understand the challenges that are put on so many women who have to choose sometimes between their careers and taking care of their children, and the United States falls way behind other countries in how we deal with parental leave for the father and mom. So I've been looking at ways that we can do this here in the United States that would keep women in the workforce and still the last thing we want to do is create something where you have employers deciding they're not going to hire a woman because of the fact that they may be having to pay for leave. So the trick in this whole thing is, how do you pay for it, and what does it look like? And there have been a lot of different ideas that have been tossed around. They sound good for a while, and a couple of days later, you need to rethink it again. So I think that's been the challenge: is what does it actually look like? But I've come to the point where I believe we need to do this. We need to come together and develop a paid family leave that
So are there specific ideas that you currently like? What are you leaning?
Well, I did, like I said, you like them for a while until a few days later they don't sound as good. So I don't think I don't think we've come to a point where we can settle on exactly how it's going to be paid for. That's the biggest challenge, is how do you pay for it? There's different ways that you can, but there's pros and cons to each one of them. So what I'd like to do is bring this and just get a consensus that we have to do it, and let's have hearing. Let's put this before the committees. Let's listen to ideas of how that would work. What would it look like? But let's first come to an agreement that America needs to come to grips that we need to have paid family leaves. We have more and more women who are professionals now, working moms, and what does a small company do? How does that work? I was the owner of a small company. How do you handle mom or dad, getting paid family leave? And so there's still a lot of challenges to what that would look like. However, I do believe we need to get there. We need to come together and agree on how we pay for this. But let's not disagree that it's time that we have paid family leave in the United States.
So you don't have any specifics that you...
No specifics that I want to talk about today, because like I said, they sound good. There's pros and cons to it. So this doesn't have to be something that I developed. I think we need to all come together and first agree that it's time that we have paid family leave in the United States, and let's iron out what it will look like and how we pay for it, because there's a number of ways that we talked about that how it could be paid for, but like I said, there's cons to each one of those, and I think we need to just have that discussion first, that we've come to a point in America where it's time to have paid family leave.
You and Senator Casey, to put it mildly, squabbled last week over your position on pre-existing conditions. You have maintained that you support coverage for pre-existing conditions, voted in the American Health Care Act for provision that allowed for coverage of pre-existing conditions, but lifted the caps that insurance companies could charge for coverage. You have voted at least 6 times, by my count, for the full repeal of the Affordable Care Act with no replacement.
Sure.
which would have strict coverage for pre-existing conditions. I wonder if you could explain those votes
Sure.
in that context.
So first of all, you know, I have been public in the fact that I would not support any replacement of the Affordable Care Act that did not cover people with pre-existing conditions. I don't know how much more direct you can be than it coming right out of the horse's mouth, although that may not be what opponents want to hear. That has been the fact. In fact, I co-sponsored a bill that said just that. From the time we repealed the Affordable Care Act, I co-sponsored a bill the next day that said that whatever committees, the committees of jurisdiction, needed to make sure that we cover people with pre-existing conditions. Now that's pretty clear of where I stand on pre-existing conditions. Although it's used politically and obviously a weapon across the country that Democrats are using against their opponents, Senator Casey has decided to use that against me in spite of the fact that nobody's calling him out, that said, you know, Congressman Barletta has been clear that he will not support anything that didn't cover pre-existing conditions. Of course, you could take the vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act and stop it halfway and say, well, when you repealed the Affordable Care Act, you didn't replace it with something that covered pre-existing conditions. Well, when you repeal the Affordable Care Act, we first had to come up with a bill that replaced it, which I have also been critical of, that we should have had something ready to go to repeal it. So, you know, the facts have been clear that I have never voted for any replacement of the Affordable Care Act that did not cover people with pre-existing conditions. The bill that we did pass, that I did vote on, now again I'm going to repeat that the day after our repeal of the Affordable Care Act, I co-sponsored a bill that said that pre-existing conditions must be covered. Now, does that sound to you like somebody who doesn't want to cover people with pre-existing conditions in spite of the $5 million Senator Casey has trying to convince people in Pennsylvania that that's my position?
Now, Representative, I mean, just the fact check you on that. Back in 2011, you voted for what was called the Repealing the Job-Killing Healthcare Law Act. Mm-hmm. And that bill basically repealed everything, or would have had it pass the Senate. Did not come with a replacement provision. So
the Affordable Care Act, I'm going to, if I can,
finish my question.
Go ahead. I know what the question is.
Yeah, this bill effectively got rid of the protection for pre-existing conditions. So why did you vote for that bill if you support this protection?
The next day is when I co-sponsored the bill that said that any replacement had to cover people with pre-existing conditions. I know you don't want to hear that, but that's the fact of the matter is, and the Affordable Care Act didn't go into law until when?
No, some would say if that's true, you put the cart before the horse.
So we were going to, I'm not going to convince you. So we repeal the Affordable Care. I'm trying to. You have to repeal the Affordable Care Act first, and there was going to be a product that replaced it. I was not going to support a product that replaced it that didn't cover people with pre-existing conditions. Now I know that flies in the face of the commercials that are going, and for those that want to make me out to be somebody who is going to leave these poor people out in the dark, when the facts are, nobody's backing up and saying, no, wait a second, Senator Casey, he did do that. I didn't hear one person say that to him. Well, he did co-sponsor a bill that said that we need to protect pre-existing conditions. He never voted on any replacement that didn't cover people with pre-existing conditions. Why don't you ask Senator Casey that? Where have I proven that I will not cover? You don't want me to. This is the narrative those that on the other side are trying to make, and you're making that position for them, and I'm not going to convince you of that. But I have never, ever said that I would support anything that didn't cover people with pre-existing conditions. So isn't that what matters? I mean, if you have somebody that has a pre-existing condition, the fact that the candidate or the congressman said that I won't support anything that doesn't, I won't vote for a replacement that doesn't, shouldn't that be enough? I mean, I know what we're trying to do here.
Let me ask you this, though. I mean, so your party, the House Republican Conference did not have a replacement product ready to go until 2000.
And I'm critical of that.
Until 2017.
I'm not defending that position.
Okay. Did you reintroduce that legislation in each session of Congress with each successive repeal vote?
Did we?
Did you reintroduce your pre-existing coverage legislation in each successive Congress with each successive repeal vote? Is there at least three sessions of Congress before the replacement product
came up?
Did you reintroduce that bill in every subsequent session?
I don't believe they have. I mean, I know there's this
Well,
like
I'm asking you though if you reintroduced your pre-existing condition bill.
Oh,
in every congressional session.
You mean the one I did the day after?
Since 11, yeah.
Probably. I don't believe so, John. So listen. I know what I know what we're trying to do here. We're trying to support.
I'm trying to drill down to some level of specificity.
Okay. So are you trying to challenge me to whether or not I really want to cover people with pre-existing conditions?
We're asking you about your voting record. That's simply what we're doing.
I will take your desire.
No, I know. I understand what you're doing.
Your
I understand that. But if the person said to you, I won't vote for any replacement that doesn't cover people with pre-existing conditions. So I don't care how many times we repealed it. The fact is, we were going to replace it with something, and I said I would not support something that didn't cover people with pre-existing conditions. Why is that not enough? Why are you looking for a hair in the egg to try to make this case that he wants to throw people with pre-existing conditions off? Because that's the narrative of the Democrats, and you're giving me you're putting their position forth when I said that I will not. I don't know how much more to say that.
Well, you've been in the Senate for nearly a decade.
I haven't been in the Senate yet. November.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Nice
You've
thought.
been in the House.
Good thought. Hold that
wanna
thought.
go to the
Hold
Senate.
that thought.
You've been in Congress for nearly a decade.
Yeah.
You know
8 years.
that there is a difference between sponsoring a bill and actually voting for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, lots of bills.
So tell me what bill I voted for that did not cover people.
In 2011, you voted for the repealing the job-killing
No.
healthcare law act.
What replacement of
And
that?
you say you co-sponsored a bill afterward that would have replaced it, but your vote for the bill that eliminated pre-existing conditions happened before you co-sponsored.
So can I ask you something? Can I ask you to please tell me, what are you trying to get? Are you trying to insinuate that I don't support people with pre-existing
I'm not
conditions?
insinuating.
No, I know. I don't know the purpose of what you're trying to do, though. I don't get it. If the replacement I voted for covered people with pre-existing conditions, and you were somebody out there watching this and had a pre-existing condition, and you had to make a choice, and the candidate is saying, I won't support anything or didn't vote for a replacement that didn't cover it. What is it you're trying to get at? I'm not following what you're really trying to get at. I said I wouldn't support anything that didn't cover it. Are you trying to say I'm lying? I really don't know the purpose of your questioning.
Your votes are your votes.
No, I understand my votes. What are you trying? I don't get what you're trying to get at. What are you trying?
I'm trying to get at.
So are you trying to say that I voted?
And what you've done.
Oh boy. So the replacement.
That's all the
so
voters have
so
to go
okay,
on.
okay. So I voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Do we agree on that?
Yes, many times.
Okay. And I voted the replacement that I voted for said you cannot deny people with pre-existing conditions. Do you agree with that?
No.
Wait,
No.
I'm at
For the second one.
the American Health Care Act, our replacement. That was our replacement for the Affordable Care Act. That is clear that you cannot deny people with pre-existing conditions. That's what I voted for. Do you agree with that?
Let's drill down on the bill that you just referred to, the American Health Care Act. Okay.
But you didn't answer my question of did I not vote for the replacement that said you cannot deny people?
There's a very real question.
Why can't you answer? It's a simple yes or no. Like you're asking me, you're not being honest and answering yes or no.
Let's stipulate for a moment. You voted for the American Health Care Act.
And did it not cover? Did it? Can we say it loud? Can I hear it out of somebody's mouth?
There are questions about whether that bill actually would have protected pre-existing conditions.
Well, tell me what. Let's go through that.
Congressman, there are studies that show that bill. First, yes, we'll stipulate you voted. That is a proven fact in the congressional record. That bill, however, lifted the caps that insurers could charge for people with pre-existing conditions. There's Kaiser Family Foundation.
Very left-wing studies that you're citing, but go ahead.
The noted left-wingers of the Kaiser Family Foundation. That's as maybe. There is data that shows.
Very left-wing. Go ahead.
You can quibble about the partisanship. That would have lifted the caps, with having the effect of making it so expensive that thousands of people would have lost their coverage. Anyway, I want to ask you how that is responsible in light of that. How that's responsible for
so
us.
let's go through that. So the replacement, the American Health Care Act that we replaced Obamacare with, which we were going to replace it with, said number one, you cannot deny people with pre-existing conditions. Period. I'm going to repeat that. You cannot deny people with pre-existing conditions. One. Number two, You cannot throw people off their health care plan if they have a pre-existing condition. That's number 2, period. 3, you cannot raise the premiums for anybody that has pre-existing conditions. That pretty well covers anybody with pre-existing conditions. Now that covers 93% of the people we're talking about. There's 7% of the people that you're talking about. And that 7% consists of people who have let their insurance lapse. So they no longer have insurance. They let it lapse. So now what happens to a person who has a pre-existing condition, maybe a heart condition or cancer or something? Now they go back, they want to get coverage. So they go back to the insurance company and they say, I want insurance. Well, the insurance company knows you have either a heart problem, diabetes, or cancer. You're right. Of course they're going to say we've got to increase the premium because we know you're sick. And we know the costs for insurance are going to be more. So we covered that 7%.
You are talking, Congressman, about tens of thousands of people.
We're talking about 7%. You're not letting me
say 7%.
Why can't I? John, you're asking me a question. You're not letting me finish.
I am letting you finish.
Well, no, because you know why? Because it's making too much sense, and so you want to cut me off before I get to the end of it.
You're saying 7% as if that's a small number. 7% is still a lot of people.
John, can you let me finish, please?
Go right ahead.
So 93% of it, we cover everyone. That 7%, this is how we handle it. Those 7% whose premiums would go up, we created a high-risk pool of money to give to the states to cover the difference of the increase in premiums, so those folks cannot be denied, cannot be thrown off, and the increase will not come out of their pocket. It'll come out of the money that... Now that just blows your argument out of the water.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Well, let's
What part of that don't you like?
Kaiser data shows, the studies show that you can quarrel about the partisanship, but the numbers are the numbers.
But I'm just giving you the facts. So what part of what I said?
A lot of those people would still not be able to afford coverage, Congressman. That is the de facto effect of your bill.
They would not.
Public replacement. A lot of those people would still not be able to afford coverage. Period.
Well, everybody has to. I mean, all of us that have insurance, whether you have a pre-existing condition or not, you're paying some insurance. You're paying for some insurance. So you can say that for everybody. You can say that for everyone. None of us can afford our insurance. And because of Obamacare, thank you, Senator Casey, most people can't afford their premiums any longer because they've gone through the roof. The deductibles are so high. How many millions of people?
Because your president
let's fight for those people. 114% insurance premiums have gone up in Pennsylvania. How do you think that affects the middle class? Now I have an insurance card. Thank you. And my deductible is so high, I can't afford to pay the out-of-pocket, so I'm not going to the doctor. Let's fight for those millions of people that have been affected because of the Affordable Care. What about them?
Would you then ask the White House to put the subsidies back into place?
Right.
The White House eliminated the subsidies, leading to those rate increases.
Where's the money coming from? How are you paying for all this?
That's not my problem. It's yours, sir.
Oh, guess how they're paying for it? $716 billion out of Medicare. You want to talk about hurting senior citizens? And show me the study that says that didn't happen. $716 billion was taken out of Medicare to help pay for Obamacare. Why aren't we seeing commercials about that to senior citizens about killing Medicare? Nor will you say that. You can't gloss over the bad facts of Obamacare and try to defend it because you're taking a Democrat position and trying to make the case for them.
You're trying to parse your voting record. It's not Democrat.
Well, how about his voting record? Do you think that's a problem?
When Senator Casey was here, we asked him about it.
Did you ask him about this? Did you ask him about the $716 billion that came out of Medicare, rated Medicare, to help pay for Obamacare? How did that affect senior citizens and Medicare going forward? I don't remember you asking that. Did you? I'm just asking that question.
We talked about health care.
They didn't ask about the $716 billion that was taken out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare.
Maybe your campaign should have floated that question to us.
Maybe you should have looked into, facts on both sides before you prepared to do this interview. You seem to be well versed.
There are no facts. But I do want to drill down a little bit further into the AHCA. So another thing from Kaiser Family Foundation, which nonpartisan, but I want to talk to you about the issue of the state waivers that was part of this law, part of this bill. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, this would have amended the required benefits under the law if doing so could achieve a number of purposes, including lowering premiums. However, Congressional Budget Office, again, nonpartisan, said that provision under this bill that you voted for would have likely prompted changes that could have left people with pre-existing conditions vulnerable to large increases in premiums.
So that's the same, you just twisted the same, we just went through this, so I guess you didn't hear my answer. My answer was, this is unbelievable. We just spent 10 minutes with John you're making the same argument that John, with the same liberal study group that you're using, and I'll give you the same answer that I gave John because it hasn't changed. We created a pool of money for states with waivers to cover people who had pre-existing conditions when their insurance premiums would go up so that they could be subsidized for the difference. Now that blows your argument out of the water, but that covers those folks. You just don't want it to cover those folks because you want to have something to say that's going to hurt people with pre-existing conditions, and I don't know why you want to do that. If we're talking about covering people with pre-existing conditions, we should all be happy that we've done that, but that doesn't support your position, and that's not what this should be about. I'm not running against you. I'm running against Bob Casey, and he's using a commercial that's not factual, and nobody's calling him out for it, and you're making his case for him so that he can continue to run these horrible ads picking on people who are sick. Nobody, I would support no bill that didn't cover people with pre-existing conditions. Now, if you think I'm lying, then we're not going to agree. But I'm publicly saying it. I've said it from the beginning, and it just doesn't support the argument so that we can't make a case that somehow I want to throw people off their insurance when that's not true. So I'm not going to convince this panel here, but hopefully people watching this understand that when somebody says I will not vote for anything that didn't cover people with pre-existing conditions, that's what that means. And when the argument that I voted for, when I'm telling you that what I voted for made sure we covered people with pre-existing conditions, and the states that have waivers, we provided a pot of money to cover the increase in premiums. Now, most people that listen to this can understand it. Hopefully, the second time I explained it, it's sinking in.
All right. Moving right along. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, you brought up Medicare, so I want to talk about that because Senate Leader McConnell last week talked about the cost of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security really contributing to the deficit, really. Talked about how it's time to rein in those costs. What do you think needs to be done to make sure these programs are around when some of the folks in this room are
Well, the first thing we can do is get rid of Obamacare that takes $716 billion out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare. So that's one way we could strengthen it, not take that money out of Medicare. Second way we could strengthen it is to continue to grow the economy. You know, what's happening, the strain on Medicare and Social Security is based on the fact that a lot of us are retiring at the same time, the baby boomers so-called, where we have so many people now taking the benefits out because of their age and less people paying in. By growing the economy, we have more people paying in. We have more workers. More taxes coming out of their paychecks to go into this. By growing the economy, we strengthen Social Security and Medicare because we have more people working, and that helps these programs where much of the money comes out of the paychecks to pay for them. So if you have more people working than taking out, obviously the program's going to be stronger. If you have more people taking out than paying in, obviously these programs are going to be in trouble.
Now, some Democratic lawmakers have countered that part of the reason the growing deficit is really not so much the fault of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, but tax cuts, and there's a lot less tax revenue coming in, and that's what's going to contribute to
Are these the same Democrats that oversaw the greatest addition to our debt in American history, where we went from $10 trillion to over $20 trillion, more than every president combined all the way back to George Washington? It's amazing that all of a sudden they woke up and now they're concerned about the debt when they were in charge of the greatest increase in our debt in the history of our country, including all the way back to George Washington combined. I'm glad now they're concerned. So here's how, again, we address our debt, okay? By growing the economy. The tax cuts obviously brings in less revenue initially, But then by growing the economy, we actually gain it. And over a 10-year period, we'll begin to reduce our debt because of the growth in the economy at 4.2% GDP. We've already this year, as a matter of fact, and again, to make that argument, we have more revenue this year with the tax cuts than any time in our history. So we actually have more revenue. And it's hard for Democrats to understand that by giving tax cuts and growing the economy, businesses invest, they hire workers, and you get more taxes. Democrat philosophy is take more taxes from the business, and that's how they believe that government should work. We believe something different. We believe that if you grow the economy, if you allow businesses to have more of their own money, if you allow the American people to have more of their own money, in the long run, the federal government gets more tax revenue in because more people are working, there's more investment, and you grow the economy rather than just take taxes, raise taxes, stifle the economy. Under Obama, GDP was at 2%. In fact, he said that's the new normal. Get used to it. He admitted that's the best that we can do. Under President Trump and this administration, GDP is at 4.2%, more revenue than we've had before. And in the long run, it's like any business. If you've run a business, when you borrow for equipment or capital, of course there's an initial debt. But the reason for that borrowing is to grow your business so that you have more customers and more revenue. It's the same way with the federal government. So it's two different philosophies. Obviously, because we're overseeing the greatest economy that we can remember, it must be working. More people are working than are unemployed. Stock market's up. GDP. Every metric of the economy is better today. 4 million people came off of food stamps. We should be celebrating that, not trying to find ways to criticize that. 13 million more people went on food stamps under the Obama administration and the Democrat leadership. 13 million people. 4 million people have come off in 2 years under this administration. So obviously 6 million people got either a bonus or a wage increase. Every metric of the economy, it's working now. We should be celebrating that rather than trying to find reasons to criticize it.
Well, with all due respect, I've actually pulled some Labor Department data. 3/4 of the jobs created since the crash do not pay a middle-class income. Wages are not growing.
So
and there are CBO figures that show that the estimated fiscal 2018 revenue would have been $3.5 trillion prior to the tax cut, but in fact the government took in $202 billion less. Can you explain those disparities?
So you're saying the economy's not doing well?
I'm not saying it's not doing well. I'm saying it's not doing as well as you're saying it's doing. I think you're overblowing.
So if it's just doing a little well,
you have said revenues were higher. They provably are not,
yeah,
according to CBO figures, and wages are not keeping pace.
Well,
so how are all boats?
So
being
if you understand,
how are all boats being
well,
lifted?
if you understand the economy and how that actually works, obviously when there's a competition for workers, which there is right now, we now have more jobs than people who are unemployed. When there's a competition for workers, wages go up, and the reason for that is eventually, here at the Patriot News, you're not going to want people to walk across the street and go to another news agency who's going to pay you more. Because there's a competition for workers, employers pay more money, wages will increase. So because the economy is going so good, and you have to get the economy rolling first to create that competition, you're not going to have a competition first unless you grow the economy. And that's what we've seen in 2 years. It's like you're hoping the economy doesn't do well. It's almost, that's the sense I get. It's like you're rooting against the economy, rooting against workers, rooting against wage increases, trying to find a hair in the egg just because you don't like this president. It's just, I don't understand how you wouldn't be holding Senator Casey accountable for why such a poor economy under the Obama administration. Why is the economy doing so well under Republicans? We should be celebrating America's success and not trying to find a reason to deny it.
We're not trying to deny it. I'm questioning you about it.
Well, I'm pretty happy with the economy, John. I hope you'll be happy with it too. People I talk with around the state of Pennsylvania seem to be doing very well. Every business I talked to said business has not been greater. You know, finally, you know, we can buy, we can hire people. That's good news to me. You know, I remember just a couple years ago where they were cutting back on hours. People were going to work, laying off, wondering if they're the next one to be laid off. You know what? We've gone from there to a point where people say, I can't find workers. I need to find workers. Travel with me. Hop on the bus and travel around and listen. Don't listen to me. Listen to what people are saying around Pennsylvania. We can't find workers. The economy is going so well.
Why can't they find workers? What do they say?
We need
issues?
One of the issues are we need to teach people the skills for the jobs that actually exist, and that's been a skills gap that we've had here for some time.
What kind of skills are they looking for?
They're looking for welders. We're looking for diesel mechanics. They're looking for people who can run equipment.
Because for a while the push was, and we're both from an industrial
the push was
area,
the push was
away
go to
from
college.
manufacturing, and toward,
we all had to
now
go.
we've seen
We
trades,
all
but
went to
it has
college.
to be in the right trades, and for a long time that push was toward healthcare, medical, and also IT.
Yeah.
At least in parts of the state that you know, we're both from a coal country,
Right.
manufacturing. Now, what do you do afterward type of area? So, have you seen that change where from, I don't know, the early 2000s when you first were mayor of Hazleton, and then you took over in the district up there that then now stretches down to our part of the state.
Right.
What changes have you seen as far as what trades they're looking for then? Because I know the push then was toward financial healthcare.
Right.
What's changed?
Well, what's changed is we're manufacturing again. So you know, we're manufacturing again, and they're manufacturing jobs. They're technicians. They're welders.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because of the gas industry, welders can make up to six figures right
shale.
now in the shale. They can make up to six figures right now. You know, mechanics, diesel, every aspect of skilled labor that is needed. There's a shortage of right now, and the other reason is because so many people are going back to work. We have so many people back into the workforce that what we need to do actually now is look at welfare, and look at able-bodied folks who are on welfare and say, listen, we need you. We need you back in the workforce because we need workers. There's an opportunity for you now. Let's teach you a skill for some of the jobs that are actually out there, and let's get you off of welfare and back into the workforce again. And that's where I think we really need to focus on now is let's get these folks back in the workforce because we need them.
So how do you propose that? How do you propose the type of training for those types of individuals as far
Career
as
tech
welfare?
education is the best way to do it, and I actually
As part of the welfare program, as kind of like a graduate step up.
you go out and try to find you a job, and if you can't, then let's teach you a skill as part of the program to get you a job because we need you back in the workforce.
So at Saturday's debate, you and Bob Casey were asked, would you vote for a bill that would prevent the firing of Bob Mueller, who's investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election? You seem to equivocate there.
No, I'm pretty clear. I'll
Yeah,
do it
answer me
again.
now.
I'll do it again. I don't think anybody should get a position where you can't get fired. Who gets that? Can you get that deal here? Go to your management here and say, listen, I'd like a deal where I can't get fired. Do you think anybody deserves that?
I'm not investigating.
No, I'm
the
asking you.
President
I'm
of
just
the United
asking.
States.
Well, but should anybody get a deal where they can't get fired? So if this investigation goes on 5 more years at the taxpayer's expense, how would you feel about it? Would you still feel like, well, we can't fire him, there's nothing we can do? That doesn't make sense. Nobody gets a deal like that. I said it in the debate that I hope Mueller's there for the end of this investigation. I hope he is there. However, if this is going to go on for year after year, it's already 2 years, at what point do you say enough is enough? If you can't come to a conclusion, then we got to get somebody else in there to get the American people want a conclusion to this. You want to give somebody a lifetime position at the taxpayer's expense, regardless if it never ends. I was in business. I wouldn't give anybody a position that says you can't get fired. So I don't know why anybody would support that. On behalf of the taxpayers of the United States of America, no politician should say we're going to use your money, taxpayers, and we're going to make sure that this person can't get fired with it. Heck no. That's what the point I was getting at. I want Mueller to be there. I want this to come to an end, but I'm not giving anybody at the taxpayer's expense a lifetime position to say, regardless if this thing goes astray, you're protected. Why would you do that? That's not good business. You can't get it. I can't get that. Why should he get it?
What do you think is a reasonable amount of time for this investigation?
I think it's already a reasonable amount of time. Like if in 2 years you can't find whether or not the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to interfere with the election after 2 years, which they've agreed that hasn't happened. Not that the Russians have not tried to interfere. We all agree with that. They have tried to interfere. There is no example where they believe that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to interfere. And that's what the investigation was for. That's what the taxpayers paid for. We're way off now into different rabbit holes that we're investigating that had nothing to do with the original intent of this investigation. Remember, the taxpayers are paying for this. So if the purpose of this was to find out whether or not the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians, and we don't believe, or there's no evidence at all that supports that, then how long is this going to go on? Taxpayers don't have the money for this to go on and on and on. I believe we've all come up, if there's evidence of that, then fine. If there's no evidence of that, then that wasn't the intent of this investigation. Because then it begins to look to the American people like you're trying to find something wrong. If the intent of the investigation was specific, and you haven't been able to find anything there, and now you're looking at some other reasons, it's like, why? What's the purpose?
But then the same thing happened in the Starr probe. Mr. Starr was charged with investigating Whitewater.
And I'm saying...
He eventually found his way to the Lewinsky matter and perjury there. I mean, you're essentially arguing he should not be allowed to pursue the same path.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, how long are we going to go on with this, John? Like if you...
5 years under Ken Starr, I think.
Well, do you think that, I mean, the tax...
I'm not making any value.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I don't know whether you agree with that or not, but I just don't think the taxpayers want to keep paying for this. It appears like it's going to go on until we find something. Like if you have something, then show it. But if we investigate...
Would you tell the United States Attorney that you said that he's investigated too long and needs to stop, even though he's not reached the end of his probe yet?
How about Benghazi? I mean, we could go on and on with all these questions that we still have about Benghazi. Who knew about it? Did the president know about it? Was he fundraising while this was happening? Where exactly was he? What did Hillary Clinton know? I mean, we can go on. What happened to the emails? I mean, we can go on and on and on if we want to keep digging in and digging and digging and digging. And I'm just saying that at some point, if there's evidence of wrongdoing, then show it. If there's no evidence, how long is this going to go on? That's my question. And what I'm saying is that I want Mueller to be there in the end, but I'm not giving him a lifetime contract with no opportunity to dismiss him.
Now, when you talk about the scope of the investigation, the letter from Rod Rosenstein appointing Bob Mueller originally, it is fairly broad. It says both anything related to Russian interference, anything related to the campaign with Donald Trump, also says any matters that arose or may arise directly from the investigation. That would seem to cover potentially a large territory.
And how long, I guess we're going to go back to what we were saying, how long is a reasonable time to try to come up with something? And people can disagree or agree on that. You know, what's a reasonable amount of time to do that? Is it forever? Is it forever? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years reasonable? Is 2 years reasonable? I mean, remember who's paying for this? Taxpayers. So at what point do you say, listen, if we have something, we do. If we're not going to keep making the taxpayers. This can't be a lifetime investigation until we finally get something. If there is something, then come forward. And that's all I'm saying is I want Mueller to be there. I'm not saying fire him. I want him to be there, but I don't want this to go on for 5 more years.
So what would you do if, for example, for argument's sake, if Bob Mueller was fired a month from now?
What would I do?
Yeah. What would you say? What would you do?
Well, it would be what the reason was. We gotta wait and see that. It's a hypothetical question. I don't know what the reason is. It could be Could be something that you would agree with. This could be something that you didn't agree with. I mean, I don't know how to answer that other than say we'd have to know what the reason is. What would you say?
How would you suss out the reason?
Well, wouldn't you have to know what the reason was? So if it happened a month from now, we'd have to wait that month to find out what the reason was.
Fair enough.
We've been hearing quite a lot about this column of Central American migrants who've been making their way slowly northward, homeless, some of them asylum seekers, mostly women, a lot of women and children in the bunch. The president has employed some fairly incendiary rhetoric, insinuating that there might be terrorists in the column, cast them as invaders. I wonder if you share his assessment of that, and if you think that kind of rhetoric is responsible.
I guess it's rhetoric if there's none of it is true, but
he has since acknowledged that there are no terrorists in the column.
We don't know that.
He just acknowledged it.
Well, John, where did we do the background check of the 12,000 people? Did we ever do the background check to know that? I mean, really? That's crazy.
What I'm saying is the president asserted it, and he has now withdrawn that claim.
We don't know. There could be. There are a lot of.
You think there are?
There could be. I'm saying there could be. Are you saying that you're willing to take the chance that there isn't? Are you okay with that? I mean,
why make, if you don't have any evidence for it, why make this search?
Why does that bother you? I would be happy that I have a president that cares about you, John, and then says, listen, I don't want there to be a terrorist in that group. You know, I don't want it. We know there are Middle Easterners in there. We know.
How do you know that?
We know because they know, because we're there. We're there. We know that not all of them have come from Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador. We know that. We know that for a fact. I'm on Homeland Security. I serve on the Counterterrorism and Intelligence Subcommittee. I have a little more information than you do.
So do you have data that supports that?
I have a little more information than you do.
Have you seen data that supports that?
So we do know that terrorists are using our southern border as a way to get into the United States. The fact that there are 12,000 people trying to invade the United States of America with a mob mentality right now, tearing down gates, it's told, and it's growing every day, and not knowing anything about any of the people. I'm glad that we have a president that says, you're not just going to march into the United States without us knowing who you are. That's reasonable.
As asylum seekers, they wouldn't have just marched in anyway.
If what?
If they're, presumably most of them are asylum seekers, they wouldn't have marched in anyway. They would have been vetted, and their cases would have been adjudicated. So they would march in without being vetted.
They're not going to be vetted. How are they going to march in? They're just going to cross the border.
Really, though? Is it just powerless to stop them?
How?
In Border Patrol?
Well, then we wouldn't have any illegal aliens in the country if what you're saying, that's fairy tale story. Then why do we have illegal aliens? How did they get here? They just marched in, right? And then because...
Are you telling me the United States government would be powerless to stop this column?
Well, then why do we have a...
That's what I'm asking.
Well, I'm asking you, then how did we get an illegal alien in the country? Why didn't we stop them? If we can, then there wouldn't be 22 million illegal aliens in the country. If
apprehensions are up, Congressman.
Well, I'm asking you, John, why do we have illegal aliens in the country if we can stop them? Because you know why?
There is an issue with border security.
You know why?
Yes.
Yeah, and you know what adds to it? This is about the contrast between me and my opponent, right? That's what I'm here for. Senator Casey supports and voted for catch and release, which creates what we're seeing right now. That's the reason we're seeing people charging the border, because they know that they cross the border, they get caught, they get released, and then they don't have to show up for a hearing, and they're into the United States. That's why we're watching this caravan of people marching through Mexico to come into the United States, because of laws like catch and release that Senator Casey supports, that encourages people to come into the United States because they can't be turned away.
Okay. What do you intend to do about that?
Well, if you would listen to me when I was mayor back in 2006, when I was
I
the first,
talked to you when you were mayor in 2006.
when I was one of the first people in America to say illegal immigration is a problem, we need to secure our borders, we need to enforce our laws, and you know, maybe I was a little ahead of the time back then, you know, because I had to deal with it. I saw the problem of illegal immigration. I had to deal with it every morning. I went to work and I saw what illegal immigration does to a small town community. I saw how it affects our hospitals, our schools, you know, the taxpayers in the community. And I spoke out, why have they not secured the border? Senator Casey's there 12 years. Why wasn't it fixed? He had 2 years where they controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. Why didn't they stop illegal immigration then?
There was a bipartisan bill that came out of the Senate in 2013 from the Gang of Eight that disappeared without a trace on your side of the Capitol.
That what?
There was the Gang of Eight bill in 2013 passed
Yeah.
by the Senate that disappeared without a trace on your side of the building.
John,
In
that
a majority
was
Republican House.
so. Let's talk about what that bill was. That was again. That was a promise. It was amnesty with a promise to the American people. They don't want a promise anymore. They want. You can't offer people a pathway to citizenship without securing the border first, because all you've done is made the problem even worse. Because when you tell people we're going to give you a pathway to citizenship, oh, and we're going to secure the border later, you've just given a green light to people from all around the world to say, get into the United States, you're going to get a pathway to citizenship because the borders are still open. That's crazy. If you had a house with a hole in your roof, would you replace the carpet?
So,
Well, I'm asking, would you? I'm just to put this in a common sense. I know that seems too simple, but it's something that you could probably agree on. If you had a hole in your roof, would you replace your carpet first? So why would you give a pathway to citizenship without securing the border? You would fix your roof first and then replace the carpet.
Because politics is the art of the possible. You had a deal in hand that had been forged by a bipartisan majority in the Senate, including some of your Republican colleagues over there. And in the absence of that, the Republican majority in the House chose to do nothing.
So
and
what
in
was
the intervening 6 years, the Republicans in control of both houses of Congress and the White House have chosen to do nothing.
So what was wrong with President Trump's proposal that wanted to triple, not double, triple the Dreamers? And all he wanted to do is, I will triple what President Obama wanted to do.
So
But
why didn't Republican majorities in the House and Senate pass that?
why didn't one Democrat? Why did they walk away from the table?
Why did you need Democratic votes? You have an
John,
overwhelming majority.
whose side are you on? You sound like you're running against me.
I'm asking you a question.
No, I know you don't. You sound like you're running against me.
I'm asking you a question.
And
How is it you were powerless with majorities to pass that bill?
Because you can't get one Democrat to support
Why
it.
did you need them?
You don't need any
with,
Democrat?
With numbers that you have now, why did you
So,
need them?
so my question is, what is it that not one Democrat found? What is it that not one Democrat could agree that this was okay? What part of that didn't they like? What part of it didn't they like? All it said is, we will legalize 1.8 million Dreamers. But we need to secure the borders, we need to end chain migration. What was it that offended them? I thought the Dreamers were important. Not one Democrat found that acceptable. What was it that made them turn them away from the Dreamers in that proposal?
With all due respect, you're not answering my question.
So,
with overwhelming majorities in the House and Senate control of the White House, you did not require Democratic votes to pass that if you were in earnest about
because you needed in the Senate, you needed every single, because the margin, that's why I'm running, to increase the margin. Because if the Democrats are going to resist every single thing that this president does, and not one person will vote in a bipartisan way, and that would require you to get every single Republican, how can you fault the Republicans when not one Democrat was willing to act in a bipartisan way? Not one. And to say because 90% of the Republicans agree, but they just didn't have enough votes to pass it on their own, because not one Democrat would act in a bipartisan way. How can you blame the Republicans for that when 90% of them agree, but not everyone did? But not one Democrat was willing to work with the Republicans to make sure we have border security, and we gave 1.8 million Dreamers legalization.
If I recall correctly, the objections were over so-called chain migration and the end to...
So the Dreamers didn't matter that much to them over
I'm
that,
not
over people they didn't even know.
I'm not a spokesman for the party, sir. I'm just asking.
I thought they cared about the Dreamers. I thought that was really important.
What do you think should be done about the Dreamers?
I think I'm willing to take care of those that, again, those that came here at no fault of their own, and provide legalization for them under the condition that we secure the border first, and that we put an end to the lottery and chain migration, and go to a merit-based immigration policies, and legalize those that are here. I think that's fair. There's something there for everybody. The American people want the border secure.
What does that look like?
What does the border secure look like?
Yes. When you say border security, what precisely do you mean?
So it means taking care of our borders, southern borders, northern border, our visa overstays. Nearly 50% of the people that are here illegally, they don't come here illegally. They come on a visa. Visa expires.
Right.
Taking care of visa overstays and make sure that people cannot come into the country illegally, that they have to come in through the legal process.
Does that also mean building the president's border wall?
Yeah, it means building the border wall where the border wall makes sense. It means using technology where technology makes sense. It means using whatever we can to prevent people from coming into the country illegally. It's a national security issue, and it's a job security issue as well. It's unfair to the American worker to have people just come into the country illegally, compete for their job, depress the wages of the American worker.
Now, would you call yourself a fiscal conservative?
I don't classify myself anything. I am what I am. I vote the way I want to vote on dependent of the issue. I don't put a tag on what I am. You know, maybe on one bill you probably say he was, and maybe the next day I vote it would be differently. It's pretty interesting that the Koch brothers had said that I was a rhino, and the Casey campaign said that I'm too far right. I don't know how that can be, so I must be perfect, right? I must be right in the middle.
I'm curious, you know, in 2017, the Department of Homeland Security estimated that the Trump proposal for a border wall would cost $21.6 billion. I'm wondering, you know, budgets are tight. How do you think we should pay for that if that is the solution?
Well, we shouldn't. You know, what's the cost of illegal immigration costing the taxpayers? That number is far, far more than that. The cost of illegal immigration. How about the lives that are lost by anybody in America? Any American citizen that loses a loved one because our borders are open and somebody who is here in the country illegally took someone's life. What's the cost of that? If that's your brother or your sister or your mom or dad, you know, would you put a price tag on that? I mean, we have a responsibility for national security. So obviously you know, our security is at risk because our borders are open and people can come into the country and harm American people and cost the taxpayer more money. So what is the cost of doing nothing?
This is a very historic argument. You could go back to the 1820s and find very similar arguments against immigration, against the...
No, I'm not against immigration, against illegal immigration, okay? There's no argument about immigration. Immigration, this is a country of immigrants, and we welcome immigrants. And it's unfair to the immigrants who waited and came here and are trying to make a better life for themselves, for people to want others to just walk in and compete for their job, make them work for less money. They're paying for it as well. So it's unfair to immigrants. I'm a strong voice for immigrants because I want them to have a better opportunity. I want their children to get a better education. I want that money being used to educate their children. I want them to earn more money. I don't want them competing with people who just barge into the country and then say, you know, I'm staying and I could work and I could take your job and I want health care. How does Senator Casey justify, since we talked about Obamacare, how does he justify $750 million going to illegal aliens for free health care? How do you justify that to the American taxpayer? When do you start standing up for Americans first? Why is this concern by Senator Casey more for people who are here illegally than saying, I actually introduced a bill. I actually introduced a bill that would stop that. I wasn't voting for our bill because $750 million was going for subsidies for people who are here illegally. That's not fair to the American people who can't afford their health care. And we're taking their money and giving it to people who are here illegally. That's crazy. That's why you're seeing caravans coming into the country, because you have crazy politicians in Washington wanting to give people free health care. You'd travel 2,000 miles too if you knew that. You can get a job, you can go on, you can get free health care. That's why people are outraged about the problem of illegal immigration. How can Senator Casey support sanctuary cities? How do you justify that? That when this caravan comes into the United States, they can come right here to Pennsylvania, they could go right to Philadelphia, and we can protect them because it's a sanctuary city. We could actually protect those that came into the country illegally. What about standing up? What about the kids in Chicago? How about all the people? How about some of our cities where we're seeing gangs killing? Shouldn't we be worried about them rather than protecting people who are in the country illegally? The American people are tired of it. They want something done. Welcome people here legally. Legally. We have a way to come. Legally. And we have good reason for it, because you deserve it, I deserve it. Just marching in, 12,000 people marching into the country, crossing the border and saying, now we're your problem. We're not going home.
I wanted to ask you about your comment earlier about talking about ending chain migration. Now, are you talking about getting away from the practice of having somebody who's already here, having a family member come from another country?
So when you're here, yeah, you can, chain migration allows you to bring your in-laws, your cousins, yeah. and that's the pathway here. And it shouldn't be that way. That shouldn't be your ticket into the United States because somebody's already here and you can bring in extended families. Yes, your children, parents, obviously. But
Why shouldn't it be that way though? I'm sort of asking from my own personal experience a little bit, because my in-laws are immigrants. They were physicians actually. They came here because there was a doctor shortage. Came from the Philippines. They were here for a few years. They brought over my mother-in-law's brother came here. He eventually became a banking executive.
So what ends up happening is it becomes no control on who comes into the country at all, because it's your in-laws, and then your in-laws' in-laws, and then by the time you get to the end of that, you don't even know the people who are coming in. They are so far removed from your family that you have no relation with these people. You have no idea who they are, because it just becomes a chain where the in-laws and then their in-laws. Now there's no blood involved. There's no marriage involved. It's just an extended way to get into the country. So merit-based is better. We're allow obviously your siblings, your parents. They can come, but why should your mother-in-law's mother-in-law come in? And I mean, why should you continue to go down where now, just because one person got in, was allowed to be here, they now just continue to let a chain of people a pathway into the United States, rather than we should be bringing people into the country who can strengthen us for jobs that are actually exist here, for jobs that we need. We need help in agriculture. We need ag labor. We do not have people to work in our fields, but rather than let people get picked out of a lottery or be at the end of a chain migration is not a good way to allow people into the country.
But is there an argument, because family members bring it, again, I go to my own little family situation, it was like, they had support. So, I mean, let's say they have a family that can support them, can help them get on their feet till they can get established in jobs and stuff.
Yeah, but
I mean, is there an argument that for any family?
So you get to come into the country, and I would say, now you're here, you can bring your wife's family. Okay, that's support, and then they get to bring their family. Is that still support for you? Like 2 families down the road, and then they get to bring their family. How much support is that third family support. How much do you really need that third family here? And then they get to bring their family. Do you see what I'm saying? Eventually, you don't even know the people that are coming. You have no relationship with them at all because it's through your in-laws, it's through your spouse. Eventually, you have no relationship. There's no support. There's no argument you can make that down the road that you need that person to be here as well, when there are people who are waiting to come into the United States that could, you know, fill jobs that we need, that we have no control over who comes in. We've lost control of who's coming into the country just because of the extended migration of the way the policy works. So it's not trying to deny you support. It's like, let's give you the people here that is support, your parents, your children. But at some point, they need to, if it wants to go further than that, then they need to apply to come into the United States. They shouldn't get a free pass just because you got in. Now you're down 5 families that you have no clue who these people are. You know what I mean?
I'm getting the high sign from David. So
Thanks.
We'll run the curtain down on this one. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.